Hello, I'm Daniela. Today I would like to accompany you into a new discovery we did on the orchid species Diuris magnifica. We are in Australia, immersed into the Banksia woodland habitat along the Swan coastal plains, a nationally protected ecological community. Just over there, the Indian Ocean meets the southwest Australia with the city of Perth, where we are now. This Australian orchid grows in bushland reserves like this one. During our research journey, we found that Diuris magnifica acts as indicator of multiple and complex ecological factors. But how did we find it? Firstly, we discovered the pollination strategy of the orchid species Diuris magnifica. The orchids, commonly known as donkey orchids because of their ear-like petals, were taught to imitate surrounding plants to attract native bees for pollination. In fact, these orchids have no nectar, and so they likely resemble legume plants or pea plants that attract bees because they do have nectar. Solitary Australian native bees of the genus Trichoculetes pollinate a range of co-flowering pea plants in exchange for their nectar. This is how pollination works. The plant offers a reward in exchange of a pollination service. In the same habitat and in the same time flowers the orchid species Diuris magnifica that hasn't nectar, but the same bees pollinate the orchid's flowers, removing efficiently the orchid pollinia in a single visit. Doing so, the bee carries on its head a packet formed by more than 1 million pollen grains. Why do the bees confuse the orchids for pea plants? Can be for the similar color? To test that, we need to see as a bee sees. In fact, bees perceive color in different ways than humans, and they are able to see ultraviolet wavelengths that humans cannot. Using a bee visual model perceiving colors as bees do, we see that while the Fabaceae variegata, Boscia eurocarpa and Jacksonia sternbergiana had similar color reflectance to the orchid, Hardenbergia comptoniana had a sharply different color. This means that the bees can confuse the orchids as yellow-red pea plants, but they are able to distinguish between the orchids and Hardenbergia comptoniana, the violet pea plant. Plus, we have behavioral evidence in support of the mimicry mechanism. Bees identically behave on orchids and yellow-red pea plant flowers, so they are literally confusing them. The mimicry is revealed. The orchids flower at the same time as the pea plants. The orchids share the same pollinators with the pea plants. Diuris magnifica mimics the color reflectance of the yellow-red pea plants that are the model species. But what is the role of Hardenbergia comptoniana? Let's look at the reproductive success of the orchids when Hardenbergia comptoniana is present. We have more orchid success when there are more flowers of Hardenbergia comptoniana. This is called facilitation effect that occurs until a certain threshold of Hardenbergia comptoniana flowers. After this, the orchid success decreases. This latter effect is called competition. Concluding, Hardenbergia comptoniana acts as a magnet species, plus minus influencing the orchid's success. Is there more? Yes. When there are more orchid plants, the reproductive success decreases. This means that in proportion there are less bees that are able to fertilize the orchids. Now, look at the habitat. Orchids grow in bushland reserves of different sizes as a result of habitat fragmentation due to anthropogenic alteration. The orchid fitness decreases when the bushland size is smaller. From this discovery, we learn that a single orchid species, like Diuris magnifica, can indicate us a cascade of complex ecological interactions. In summary, a tiny plant such as Diuris magnifica holds a lot of ecological information about the surrounding model plants, yellow-red pea plants that Diuris magnifica mimics to be pollinated by trichocolates bees. This pollination strategy is known as food mimicry. About the magnet species, Hardenbergia comptoniana is not a model, but influences the orchid fitness. About the orchid's abundance, more orchids doesn't mean more reproductive success. More orchids means less success. In proportion, we have less pollinators that fertilize the orchids. About the habitat size, larger bushland reserves lead to higher orchids' reproductive success. Larger bushland reserves equal better health for the orchids. Now we can look at orchids with more wonder than before, because we know their precious ecological value.